Hello and welcome to today's edition of Single Spine, The Issues. For some time now, we've been talking about productivity and how we can link that to pay. We've had the opportunity to look at productivity and what it means in the public sector. We've also looked at how it is measured and how we can improve on it. We're doing this at a time when the issue of productivity in the public sector has become a topical issue. A topical issue because public sector is a major employer, and then the public sector again is the consumer or the major consumer of tax resources. And so for some of you who have heard the president talk about the fact that the public sector consumes about 70% of the revenue, total revenue generated in this country, it is an issue which we should look at, and we will do this and continue to do this to find out how we can raise productivity levels within the public sector. The alarming rise of the national wage bill has been met with an understandably alarming rise in the public outcry against poor performance and a retrogressive work culture in the Ghanaian public sector, as required by government white paper. The single spine policy or pay policy this year is going to concentrate on linking pay to productivity. So on this platform today, on Single Spine, The Issues, my panelists and I will discuss how we can link pay to productivity with the role of organized labor. I will go for a quick break. When I come back, I will let you know who have joined me on this platform for this evening's program. We will be back after this break.
Single Spine, The Issues, Ghana's sole television and radio program on the Public Service Pay Administration, has so far treated various pertinent issues related to single spine salary structure. Once again, it's time to hand over the microphone to you. On the next episode, we welcome your questions, queries, and comments to our studio panel. So what at all is bothering you about single spine pay policy? Switch on, tune in, phone in, text in, and click on to Single Spine, The Issues this Saturday at 5 p.m. exclusively on GTV and Radio Ghana networks nationwide.
Okay. Thank you very much. We are back. We are live across Ghana, live on radio across the 10 regions of Ghana, and also live on the pulse of the nation. This is GTV. You're most welcome. This is Single Spine, The Issues. My guests have joined me, and I have Mr. Kwabena Nyakun Otu with the Labour Research and Policy Institute of the TUC, and he is in charge of research and policy. He's the director in charge of research and policy. To my immediate left is Mr. Johnny Otu Ankra, who is the director in charge research and budget with CLOSAG. And so they have joined me in the studio, and we will talk a lot about how we can link pay and productivity with searchlight, or for that matter, focus on organized labor. You're most welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much. You would all agree with me that we cannot run away from the fact that economic growth and rising living standards depend solely on a higher productivity. And organized labor, you have a role to play. We have linked this to leadership. We have linked this to performance management, how we can measure it and how we can improve upon it. But organized labor, as a stakeholder, you also have a role to play. Let me throw this one to you, Mr. Kwabena Nyakun Otu.
Yes, organized labor actually agree that we have a big role to play in kickstarting productivity in this country.
Yeah.
And the TUC has never shied away from that kind of role. And I'm told that just this week that if you take the Management Development and Productivity Institute, MDPI, it was an initiative for the TUC. And in the last decade, in each one of our submissions to government, we have raised the question of how we can, within a tripartite framework, kickstart productivity in this country. We have not only done that, we have been producing manuals on productivity and work ethics as a labor movement. Exploring ways, giving our own perspectives on how we can raise productivity, not just in the public sector, but also countrywide. Because as you rightly put it, you cannot continuously expect improvement in people's standard of living
Yeah.
when the output level is not rising,
Exactly.
and you can only rely on making intensive use of natural resources. So at some point, we need to be able to get the best out of the little that we have. So we have no problem.
Yeah.
And in fact, with the introduction of the single spine in 2010, our own submissions to government actually indicated the fact that government and its agencies should not think that by merely raising the salaries and wages of workers, productivity will on its own rise.
Yeah.
And that we need a structured framework for addressing productivity issues. And we thought that with the introduction of the single spine, we stand a better chance of kickstarting productivity because people naturally have seen some improvement in their pay levels and will be amenable. You can expect that people will move forward, will go along with any initiative to attempt to get the best out of this.
I am interested in this structured framework that you just talked about, and so if you can highlight a bit on it so that I can move to...
I'm talking about the fact that in this country, if you hear any talk about productivity,
Yeah.
you talk about labor productivity. But productivity has many other sides.
Yeah.
In fact, if you're a laborer, if you're a worker and you get into an office where you are supposed to work with a computer and there's no light, what do you do? So when I'm talking about structured framework, I'm talking to the extent that there are things the worker can be motivated to do.
Yeah.
But management and the setup of the organization itself requires that there are so many other things the worker also cannot do. So we need a structured framework that looks at what we call total factor productivity, or at least multi-factor productivity, where we look at the tools with which the worker is expected to deliver as well.
Okay. Now, Mr. John Ni Otuankra, this is a challenge being thrown to organized labor and the need for us to raise productivity. You also have a role to play, CLOSAC, and so...
We do.
How are you considering this?
First and foremost, if you look at Act 2003, now it's Act 651. If you look at Section 11C, it talks about duties of workers.
Yeah.
And one of them is to enhance productivity. It's there. We are aware that if we increase productivity, there are benefits that accrue to the worker. You know, at the national level, you're talking about improved standard of living.
Yeah.
People will have more money into their pockets. And their obligations, they will be able to meet their obligations. So that is given. You know, now it is left to how to do it. And I know that in the public sector, strategic planning system was introduced in the civil and local government services around the mid-80s when there was this civil service reform. At that time, the local government service was part of the civil service. It has not been hived off as a separate service. So that is where a conscious effort was made to introduce the issue of strategic planning. That is also linked to budgeting, you know, process. You do your strategic plans, your action plans, whatever. You look at responsibilities of people, assign them duties, resources that are needed to deliver, and all those things. And it's linked to the budget. So it's nothing new. All we have to do is to sustain it and not pay lip service to it. Get the resources, get the strategic plan going. And then...
So if I get you right, all these things have been made available. Resources available. Your budgetary plans and everything are in place. It is the how which you talked about earlier on. So where lies the problem? Who is not doing what?
who is not doing what.
Yes, and who is not doing the right.
When we talk about strategic planning, it's a joint effort, a collaboration between workers and management.
The employer, employee. Yeah.
Everybody should be involved. In a particular ministry or department, people should know what the mission statement is, the mandate of that organization. Yes. From the mandate, then you develop the objectives to be achieved. You also talk about outcomes.
Yeah.
Then you give indicators for the outcomes. Then the issue of measurements and things come in. And people should be assigned duties. Report. How do you report?
Yeah.
How frequently do you report? You see, and it's also a management. If somebody must manage the process so that when it is going off track, it can be brought.
Am I to understand that the problem has been with managing the process? Maybe I'll throw this one to you.
To a large extent, you are right that the issue of low productivity has, to some extent, a labor side and also a management side. So he's talking about having planned a strategic framework with clear indications of output to be delivered at the end of the year. But then those output must be accompanied by the resources to do those things. What if the resources do not come?
Yeah.
What if the resources come, but the workers also do not apply them the way they should? So you also then realize that management has a responsibility to reward and also to
fire.
I won't use the word fire.
Punish.
To punish. You understand? And that if consistently I perform, I need to be rewarded. If consistently I do not perform, I need to be punished at some point. But between setting the objectives and the output, and also getting to the results, somebody has got to do the work of providing the resources, of supervising, of monitoring. If that person fails to do that, he cannot entirely absorb himself and then begin to blame workers or begin to blame unions for coming to the defense of, because I'm not too sure that any union will want to shield workers who are not doing what is right. You understand? So it's a question of clearly defining what we want for this production unit, what resources do we require, and then also comes in the management issues. How do you, for example, design the work organization? Say that work flows in a manner which is consistent and in a manner which clearly gives every worker a task and also the process by which he accomplishes.
I will understand a situation where employees fail to work, then management comes in to punish. In the situation where management fails to identify the root cause, to identify a proper plan where subordinates should follow, who gets in to say that you should be punished?
I mean, if workers fail to perform, I will not jump to punish them. You understand? Because we have seen in this country where you punish, you bring in another person, you punish. Investigate why the workers are not performing. And then we are getting somewhere. We are getting to the root of the problem. If it's about resources, if it's about the work organization, if it's about some other things they need, if it's about motivation, and some, to a large extent, you need a certain level of democracy at the workplace. You need to allow workers a say in how the work is organized, in how the work is performed. There are too many people who go to work very jittery, and you cannot expect those people to be productive.
So the point is that it becomes a multifaceted approach that contains everything to make the public sector function better. And so everyone has a role within the chain as we speak. How do we get everyone on board, right from the top to the bottom?
See, like I said, the strategic planning process is not somebody hiding in a corner and coming and say that I have this.
But the point is, you would agree that you will find yourself in an organization where people do not even understand the strategic vision of that organization.
Exactly. You see, because everybody from the top to the bottom, the laborer, the cleaner, everybody should know what the mandate of the organization is. To the extent that if a client from the public comes into an institution and he meets a laborer, and the client talks about a particular service that he or she needs as a citizen of this country, the laborer should know who should be contacted. It means that everybody understands the mandate, everybody knows who is in charge of what. You know, so it's a collaborate, and it needs a lot of education. A lot of education.
How often should this education be carried out within the organization?
Continuous. Because when something goes wrong, there should be a review session to review the programs periodically. So there should be a meeting so that people will understand what is going right and what is going wrong. So that those who are working hard should be motivated. Motivation
recognized
doesn't mean
and rewarded.
Exactly. It's not an issue of giving money, but just at a meeting, commending somebody for a good work done.
Okay, you wanted to say something.
He talks about the fact that education should be continuous. In fact, I will even go back to place it in our education system. If you attended a university in Ghana, where on your first week, you are expected to have a course outline for a particular course, and it's stated there you get it at the end of the week, and it takes 3 weeks before you get a course outline. And then so many other things happen which do not fall in line with a proper work ethic. You going through the university is more likely to come up with that same behavior pattern. You understand? And it is important that productivity issues, and I always say that productivity issues have too big an issue that I find it strange that normally people will leave it to individual workers to address. It should start right with the education system, where people are imbued with a culture of service, of following a certain work culture and work ethic. And it should be a continuous process all the time. These disjointed discussions about productivity, especially when we are about to negotiate wages, means that we'll be having these discussions endlessly, and not enough will result from it.
Okay, all right. Let's join Josephine. She was in town to find out from the public which public institutions are productive and which ones are not. So Josephine, over to you.
Thank you, Cecile. In line with the government's white paper, as Fairwages and Salaries Commission links pay to productivity, we are here in the streets of Accra to find out from the taxpayer which public institutions are productive and which ones are not productive, and how these institutions can improve upon their services to Mother Ghana. So I have with me Frank, and I want to ask him his opinion about productivity.
Thank you very much, Madam Questioner. I can mention one or two institutions that are not productive in this country. My problem, particular with the Environmental Protection Agency, especially our sanitation aspect in this country, is very poor. When you rate it, I can give, let's say, 10% because it is not performing it is not performing at all.
Yes, for me, I think the education service, I think there is more to be done. You see, if you look at the performance of the children these days in our public schools especially, you realize that there is a lot to be done. The performance isn't really fit. So I think that the government had to put in incentives. There had to be facilities available for our children to be able to learn.
Commercial bank.
Okay, and why?
Their network is always not working.
The only institution that is doing very, very, very bad is Electricity Corporation, if I'm right. I would add VRA and Co, because they are all part of our woes now.
Okay, and what have you experienced from ECG?
Oh, their trademark, Doomso. It's the order of the day. You sleep, you can't sleep. They put it off every 30 minutes. They bring it back on. In fact, the whole country is suffering.
And another institution that I can see that is not other productive is the DVRA. They should try to come out with their policies and strategies that can eliminate a lot of road accidents on our road. So they can, when you go to market stations, the way the drivers are being parked and the kind of stoppages that are happening on our daily basis, it causes a lot of accidents on our road and kill a lot of people. When you read the statistics, you can see a lot of people dying without any reason.
The ones which are not doing well is the ECG and the water sector. I think for past 3 years, they are grappling with issues and they are not able to resolve. Their main problem is that there should be increase in tariff, and over the years, their problem have been satisfied, but up to now, they are not delivering to the public.
And then the electricity company too, when they are distributing it to the household industries, they should do well so that the illegal connections and other things, some of the meter readers, they go and they take money from the household people. They don't read the meter correctly, or even if they read it correctly, they don't go for the money. They know some of the companies that are owing huge sum of money, but they only jump on the household that are owing small monies and cutting their lines.
So yesterday I wanted to come send money to my brother in school, and I stood there for a whole hour only for them to tell me they're having technical issues, so we should all walk out of the bank.
What do you think can be done to better their services?
Well, I think those in charge should really sit up and tighten their belts. Yeah, and work very hard for the nation to move forward.
There should be more supervision with the government sector. Maybe at the end of the month, you should be given a report, write out a report of what you've done, so that it is on paper and then it is analyzed, so that people will know that, well, this is what I do and this is what I've done and this is what I'm yet to do. Then with that, I think work can go on effectively in the country.
Okay, so here are some views and comments of the taxpayer to some public institutions which needs to better their services to Mother Ghana. Over to you, Cecil.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Josephine. We are back from town with Josephine. She went out there to find out from the public the opinion, their position as far as productivity is concerned within some of the public sector institutions, and you heard it for yourself. A few of them were mentioned. Environmental Protection Agency was one, educational sector. Some talked about the Commercial Bank, Electricity Company of Ghana, DVLA, and a few. And in trying to raise some of those concerns, they also brought out some solutions, and they talked about supervision, monitoring, and all that. We have earlier on talked about this, but I think it is important, since that is a driving force that will also help us achieve our set goals within our organizations, if we will have to raise productivity levels. So we are back to the studio. Well, viewers and listeners, we would also give you the opportunity, as we have done all the time. Later on in the program, we will roll out the telephone number for you to call, and then you will join us with all your questions, with your suggestions, and with your questions, okay? My guest with me, Mr. Kwabena Nyako Otu, is with the Labor Research and Policy Institute of the TUC, and he is in charge of research and policy. And Mr. John Nee Otu Ankra is the director in charge research and budget with CLOSAG, and they are with me in the studio. Now, you would also agree with me that organizations have failed to increase productivity levels as a result of undefined services, undefined goals, undefined products. And we attempted to touch on this before we went on that break. Let us unravel this, and then we will go straight into what some of the viewers, or for that matter, Josephine touched on when she went to town. Let me throw this one back to you. Undefined goals, undefined products.
And it's partly to do with the way the public sector is set up.
Exactly.
The multiplicity of institutions coming up, purporting to address every single challenge. And sometimes also you find that they are not coordinated properly. You understand? So we need to look at the whole setup of the public sector system to clearly focus each one of those institutions. If there are institutions that are not needed, we eliminate them. And properly focus those that are needed so that we give them clear target. If, for example, and before I come to that, if you look at the institutions that were listed by the public, electricity, the education sector, and I'm sure the police and the Environmental Protection Agency, clearly there are worker-related challenges and there are also management-related challenges.
Yeah.
But if you take ECG, have anybody bothered to talk about the huge underinvestment in our energy?
Yeah.
So if you have been ordered by Gridco to cut 20 megawatts, what do you do as a ECG worker? So we need to talk about the resources with which we expect those public sector institutions to work. If you report a crime to the police and they have to follow you and they don't have any vehicle, but sometimes it amazes me that sometimes they don't even have a pen and a paper to write your statement on.
Yeah, but the point is that with regards to ECG, we have had situations where in the past you have correct power supply, all right, but then there are problems with distribution. There are problems with the fact that they have not been managed well. That is not...
Those problems...
Exactly.
I agree. Those problems, if you look into them well, distribution,
yes.
If you have a transformer that has been sitting at one place for 50 years, without it being changed, I'm not defending ECG.
Yeah.
The point I'm making is that, and illegal connections, mostly they are done by people who have knowledge of the ECG, and they are more likely to be workers of ECG.
Yeah.
So they are worker-related, they are management-related problems there. But I'm also trying to focus our attention on the issue of investment, proper investment and providing the resources. But one last issue. In this country, we take it for granted that when it comes to service delivery, anybody can deliver service. So you go to a restaurant and you ask for Pepsi Cola. They don't have it. And the waitress brings you Coca-Cola. Has he been trained? The point I'm making is that we need to, as we continuously educate, we must continuously also train our manpower. Because new technology is evolving. And you expect them to catch up. You don't expect the education system to take care of all the technology that will evolve after I have left the university.
So the point is that somebody also watching us or listening to us on radio will say that the lack of proper management skills would also lead to these undefined goals that we're talking about that will definitely reduce productivity within an organization. And so you don't turn around to blame workers, you don't turn around to blame employees. Sometimes at the top management level too, they also should be blamed.
Top management, they are also workers. That is what we sometimes we think they are not. But they are. Top management. They are also being paid. They are employees.
Yeah.
Somebody should be supervising that top manager. Whose responsibility is it to ensure that if there's a manager somewhere and he's not performing, he will call his attention and make sure that things are done right. You see, then there is this issue of commitment, national interest, and whatever. I remember when we were in school, there is civic education as part of the curriculum. Now I understand it's part of social studies or whatever it is. and it's hidden somewhere. Now there is this institution called National Commission on Civic Education. Normally, I don't hear of them doing any campaigns or talking about nationalism or people to.
They do some work.
We only hear
and they will complain about the fact that they lack resources.
When it's time for elections, that is when I hear of them. When there is no election, I don't hear of them.
I've had opportunity of doing a couple of programs with them on radio, and I know even though they are not too loud, they would complain always about the fact that they lack the resources to move around, and it's a capital-intensive exercise if you will have to. And so they're doing some work though, but it's just that they don't get the resources, the needed resources for them to be heard.
Let me tell you, the Department of Social Welfare and Community Development, during the days of the
I will come over to you. Hold on to that. I've just been informed that there's someone on the line already. And so we're giving you this opportunity, how we can all put our shoulders to the wheel to drive productivity levels up at a time when we know that we are spending as much as 70% of total revenue to pay public sector workers. This is what we have been told. And so how do we make sure that we drive productivity levels up? Okay, so the line to call, 0302 770222, 0302 770222 is the number to call. You can join us if you have questions, if you have suggestions, if you can do that again, 0302 770222 or 0302 770 111. These are the lines to call. You can join us. Now you can go over to
I
your...
was talking about the Department of Social Welfare and Community Development. They did campaigns. A lot of campaigns. Right to the doorsteps of their villages. To let them understand government policies and whatever. Educate them. There are even campaigns for cleaning the village. Abodies or whatever they call it, where people go clean the environment and whatever. I think some of that function has been taken over by the Ministry of Information or whatever.
Okay, I've just been informed that we have someone on the line. Let's go to our caller on the line, our cherished caller. Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Yes, your name and where you're calling us from.
Yeah, good evening.
Hello, good evening. Michael?
Cornelius.
Oh, Cornelius.
Cornelius speaking from Kumasi, precisely in Carrier.
Okay, Cornelius from Incarie.
Please, I want to, concerning the strike action which NAGRAT about it. I don't know what the Fairwages and Salary Commission is doing in order to help stop strike action, which it is going to affect the students who are yet preparing to write their pending mass examination. So
anytime.
What solution
or
what effort the Fairways and Salaries are doing in order to help that strike action not to come on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Cornelius. We are not discussing NAGRAT, but we're talking about how we can raise productivity for it to be commensurate with what the government is paying public sector workers. But it's within the educational sector, and so I guess we can still talk about it briefly. How would you respond to his
NAGRAT?
Because anytime there's strike action, the blame is directly pushed to Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, forgetting that there are major players.
I'm not sure I want to comment about the strike, except to say that strikes are legitimate tools by trade unions, and the labor laws of this country allows unions to go on strike to back their demands for legitimate demands for improvement.
But when they are not justified strikes, obviously.
It's difficult to determine what is a justified strike and what is not.
Okay, all right. Let me go for another call. We have someone on the line. Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
I am Amma from Swedro.
Amma from Swedro. Let's hear you. I hope you're not talking about NAGRAT. Amma.
Yes.
Yes, I hope you are not coming to talk about NAGRAT.
So I just want to contribute to the program.
Okay, go ahead. Amma, let me hear you.
Please, my problem about education service is that there is no material. There are no materials to, especially textbooks. If teachers go to classes, they don't have textbooks to teach. They teachers should go and buy, or they should provide their teaching materials. Very unfair. It is not fair.
Okay.
When teachers are not magicians, you line up the syllabus down for teachers to go and teach. No textbook. No schools have been built. No textbook. Teachers go to the class. Their money go and buy teaching materials and other things. I think the money that they have given to the NC, those money can be used to bring textbooks for the children. They are collecting too much. They don't pay any tax, but they are earning more. Those who are working are suffering. We beg you to do something about it.
Okay. So thank you very much. Ghana Education Service has got to do with lack of inputs, and she has highlighted very much on that. And this is one major constraint that would also drive productivity levels very low. And so we have talked about that earlier on. I would want us to move into an interesting part, which has got to do with conflicts. Because anytime management would want to step in to punish, anytime management steps in to correct measures, then you find unions rising up, either to protect workers or to protect management. We have situations where unions have gone into bed with management, or unions turn around to support. And so that conflict arises, and it affects the whole stakeholder setup. And this is very crucial, because if it is not addressed well, that could also reduce or drive productivity levels very low. Let me throw this one to you, and then I'll go over.
I think you are right to a large extent that there are conflict. But you can look at it this way. If you're a manager and there's a problem, and your only solution you have is to fire, then you must revise your management strategy.
Yeah.
You understand? And that is the point I made, that at the beginning of the work, let everybody be clear about what their respective roles are. Give them the resources, and let there be some democracy about the work organization. You understand? In fact, workers, unions will not on their own shield workers that are going against the established norms and regulations. But was at the same time not allow management to descend on workers for something they themselves are afraid to do.
Okay. Let me go to the phone again. We have someone on the line. Hello?
Hello.
Yes. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
My name is Isaac, calling from Nkwanta in the Bota region.
Okay, Isaac from Nkwanta.
In the Bota region.
Go ahead, we're listening to you.
Okay, my problem is about the productivity. We keep on talking about this thing, and it's a serious problem over here. Now, you come to some sectors like education office and then ECG. Most of the times you see directors being working around and leaving teachers doing their own things. They don't supervise them. Sometimes putting teachers to blame. You see a lot of teachers, our colleagues, working on the streets and they are not performing. And there's no any sanctions have been put on them. And ECG, this doing something. Always, you see, studies are not rendering, but if the bill comes, their only concern is to raise the tariffs and then make money and then and go away. The rest of it is not performing. So it's a high time, I think, I'm going to intervene and then do something about it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. You want to touch on what he said, and then maybe we can move on to...
That is why there is the Labor Act. You know, it gives an indication of the relationship between employees and employers. Apart from that, for each institution, there are rules and regulations. You know, and there is what we call a disciplinary procedure.
Yeah.
If somebody goes through, there is a process that you must use to ensure that there is discipline or whatever it is. I am also aware that the Public Services Commission as a framework for HR managers on some of these rules and regulations in the system. Because all the public services are being put together, they have come forward with a framework to guide HR practitioners in the public services. It's in draft and is being discussed. It is a document that regulates the relationship between the worker and the manager, or the worker and whatever. So there are rules. Oftentimes, the managers don't follow the rules and regulations. And that is where you see the unions coming up to see what has happened. And when they realize that the worker has been wrongly punished, and they come to the defense of the worker. When the worker goes wrong, he's also told that he's done wrong. So we don't just support our members or the workers. Where they go wrong, we tell them they are wrong. So that is it. So it looks as if most managers don't have the time to look at the rules and regulations that is in the organization which should be followed. And we are in a democracy, the rule of law. So laws are there to be followed. And then you don't just punish people without going through the disciplinary procedure.
Okay. Now, so the point is that beyond the talk and rhetoric, union leadership should be seen as maybe re-strategizing their plans, refocusing their energies to see how we can achieve the set goals that we're talking about. Before I throw this to you, let me go to the phone again. We have hello.
Hello.
Yes, your name and where you're calling us from?
Yes, I'm calling. My name is Owusu Kwagyo. I'm calling from Nkranza North in the Braham region.
Okay, Owusu from Nkranza. Let's hear you.
Yes, in the Braham region.
Go ahead, we are listening to you.
Okay. Yes, my suggestion is productivity can be increased through motivation. For instance, teachers are not motivated and they are going on strike. Instead of them to motivate them, they are giving all their money to MPs, the DCs, and neglecting the teachers. You see, so all these decreases with the security. You see that right now there is strike action. It's because of non-motivation of teachers. That's what there is strike action. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Owusu from Nkranza, from the Bono Ahafo region. His concern is motivation. This is something we always talk about, motivation. And it's nothing but money, the rewards of motivation.
I don't think
that's how people see it.
And I disagree.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at all the bashing teachers in this country have received.
Yes.
And then if you have ever traveled to some of the remotest areas where some teachers are doing their best, it can be very demotivating.
Yeah.
And I'm not holding brief for teachers. But the point I'm making is that we should discuss the productivity questions in the context of finding solution, not blame. And rather motivate people with kind words.
Yeah.
Rather than attempting to put every blame on the teacher, for example. Because you know that educational management itself in this country is in near crisis. And you definitely cannot blame the teacher for all that has gone wrong with education. He has a role to play. If you take educational management, even the way schools are set up in this country, the director visits a place and he's given some goats and he declares, okay, you guys should have a school. So educational management from the district to the regions to the national, then you get into the politicians. I think going forward, if it's the Minister of Education, he or she must have a clear target, a kind of a social bond. If it's about BEC, that for this year or for the next 5 years, this is what the people of Ghana expect from the minister.
Yeah.
And we asked her to do it. And then she, having all the resources, including the teachers, will then cascade it down. If it's about the Minister for Finance, he's been worried about high interest rate.
Yeah.
And all of them have been for the last 10 years. Can they tell us that, okay, as they bring down inflation to single digit, in the next 5 years, they will bring interest rate to single digit as well, or bring it lower. And then of all the resources he has, including all the people working in the ministries, we expect him to manage those people to achieve that target. And it goes back to the question you asked about the mission, the goals of organizations.
Yeah.
Sometimes they are so diffused, so nebulous. If you can put them down in 1, 2, 3 points, yeah, that we expect
very
the
understandable points.
Very understandable.
Let me go to the phone. I'm interested in that. We'll come back to that issue. Hello.
Hi.
Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
My name is Levi. I'm calling from Kwao.
From Kwao?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Let's hear you.
Okay, I want to talk about the issue of low productivity. And I think human just create the public sector.
I will be grateful if you can reposition yourself. There are breaks in your line, so we can hear you better.
Is that okay now?
Better. Go ahead.
I think human just create in the public sector where people don't perform their on. In the West, that's what happens. Definitely we need to transfer from the to another place for non-performing. And the person who put them on from the way he has been doing it. So I think that much of degree make people to underperform. So no matter what happens, he or she will continue to work. His job is secure, it will not be fired. And then the second issue, public sector workers have to stay on too long at a particular place, and they are not transferred out. So when new management members come in and they want to bring changes into the system, because the people have stayed for a long time, they know the history of that particular, or they know the culture of the job there. They tend to tell you, when did you come? You just come and you want to bring in this and this and that. And it becomes a very challenge for even managers who want to try to achieve their goal. I think these are things that are personally identified.
Okay, all right. I will summarize. It was a bit difficult to get what he was saying, but I can summarize that. Let's go for another call when we get back. Hello, you're live. We can hear you. Go ahead. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
I'm calling from Spintex Road.
Okay, all right.
My name is Richardson.
Okay, Richardson.
I want to contribute to the program.
Go ahead, Richardson.
That my problem is that I look at people.
Oh, it looks like we're having some difficulty, but the earlier...
All right.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now? All right. What I'm saying is that the other contributor was trying to come up with a meaningful contribution to what we are discussing. I realize that if managers can give achievable targets on weekly basis, on monthly basis, so that people will be able to achieve it every week. If it is education, let's give them achievable targets. If it is police, let's give them achievable targets. Like the way he's talking about the financial aspect of it, talking about inflation, let's give them achievable targets on monthly basis. So that if they are able to achieve it, there should be a special incentive for them. There was a friend who was working at one of the ministries. He was just employed. And work that is supposed to be done 3 days, he finished it within a day. Then the boss was saying, I had the engagement master. You should do it within 2 weeks. You see, they were only trying to create loopholes for them to make money. So that if they come, the work is prolonged. Somebody has to pay something. But if the tradition is okay and there is a target given to them, I don't think all these things will happen. So there should be achievable targets being done by managers, supervisors. Then those supervisors should be also controlled by their directors. And that is where the problem can be solved. But if we want to be generalizing it and maybe talking to people that the thing will just be going around the circle, we can never solve it. So that is my contribution. Thank you.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you very much. Do we have another caller on the line? Okay, all right. Let me come back. We have just about 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes to do this. You were talking about breaking down vision into understandable points that people can move along with. How should organizations go about this?
It's about fulfilling your mandate.
Exactly.
The reason why the organization has been set up. So if you take the police, it's about crime.
Yeah.
If you take the Registrar General's department, how many days should it take you to register a business?
Yeah.
So if the Registrar General can tell us, or we can give the Registrar General, that we don't think that upon my first entrance to your office, if I have everything, all the papers, it should not take me more than a day to register a business.
Okay.
If he currently takes 7 days to do that, we give him 3 days at least for a start. And then at the end of the year or month, we evaluate to see. But that also will mean that we provide him with the resources with which to do the work.
Okay, all right.
But it should be clear what am I
achievable targets
to
have
do.
also been talked about, and I would want to find out whether the difficulty is in setting those targets.
Yeah, it's not in setting goals. I mean, people have been well trained to do some of these things.
Yeah.
Now, one important thing is to try and develop service provision manuals, like you talked about, and then a charter with the citizens of Ghana.
Okay.
If you have a service provision manual, it indicates what and the time frame within which these things.
Yeah.
And it is also important to get a client service unit in each of the organizations. So that people
that will monitor feedback.
Yes, and all those things is part of the strategic planning system.
Exactly.
You see, we also have a certain culture which sometimes can get in the way of productivity issues. You know somebody somewhere.
Culture in the form of?
Culture in the form of the fact that I know somebody at the top.
Okay.
So I try to circumvent,
syndrome.
I try to circumvent the process.
Yeah.
We need a certain political will to surmount those cultural constraints. A will that says that I'll be fair and even-handed to all Ghanaians. And that no matter who you are, you face the rigors of the law, or you have to go through the processes that have been laid out.
Okay.
Because sometimes some people get in and get the processes choked, so that the institution is then perceived as not delivering to the people.
Now, let me take a final one from you. What assurance is organized labor going to give the Ghanaian taxpayer that service to nation is really going to be meaningful?
Assurances from workers. Like I said, when it comes to productivity, it's not only workers.
Okay.
We have said this again and again.
Yeah.
It's a collaboration effort between management and workers, or the employer and the employee. And then if it is the assurance, workers are ready. I can tell you, everybody wants to work to earn a living. Because I know a higher percentage of workers enjoy the work that they do. They get satisfaction from the work that they do. So they will be ready to provide good and quality service if there is collaboration between them and then their managers.
Okay.
I think
briefly,
for if you take, like you pointed out, if you take TUC, our educational programs, we have talked about productivity and the fact that we expect our members to give up their best. Our assurance is that we will continue to do those things. We will continue to provide whatever resources in terms of knowledge that we have in kickstarting productivity. But we expect managers, both in the private and the public sectors, to do their part.
Okay. The point is that the new salary regime is going to place focus on productivity, and so it's not going to be an increase in wage across board, the automatic wage increase across board, but sector per sector in terms of productivity and all that. What endorsement is organized labor going to give to this?
The issue is very simple. There should be guidelines as to how this is going to be implemented. And then the way performance is going to be measured is very crucial to this. Because if you tell me I produce below par, you should be able to justify it. So guidelines and proper measurement of performance.
I think we are on board. But the thing is, as you put it, we all need to agree on what is expected of me.
I will have to thank you. I'm just being informed that we are done with our time, and so it's been wonderful having you on our set today. Mr. Kwabena Nyakon Otu of the Labour Research and Policy Institute, and to you, Mr. John Ankra of Research and Budget with CLOSAC. Thank you so much. Make a date with us again, viewers and listeners. Same time next Saturday, we will be on this same platform with Single Spine, The Issues.